change roles now. It's my joy to be the moderator of this last panel. So if we keep you too late after the end of the event, then it's all my fault. So you know who to blame. But no, without further ado, I think actually this is the last session, but could be actually one of the most important sessions, because I think the session is themed Technology, a Key Driver to Address Evolving Challenges of Counterfeiting and Piracy. I think over the last 2 days, what we've heard a lot about is protecting our technology, and then on the other hand, using technology to protect our technology, which is very interesting, and it brings the innovation part of IP protection to the fore. What we also all know is that there are a plethora of technologies available in the marketplace today that all do a remarkable array of things. Which technologies will be the preeminent technologies of the future, and how they may look, and how they will be applied into supply chains to both fulfill the traditional roles that technology has in relation to inventory management, through to how they will protect goods from being counterfeited and pirated, and everything in between is certainly a very active discussion in a number of fora at the moment. So, without further ado, we have some excellent speakers here for you today who are experts in the field of technology. I'm just going to introduce my panel quickly. My first speaker is Mr. Philip Amon from GS1, and Philip is the owner and chairman of the board and CEO of SICPA Holdings. Freudian slip, I just picked up the wrong piece of paper, of SICPA Holdings in Switzerland. SICPA has experience of working with sovereign governments in implementing product authentication and tax reconciliation systems which integrate ink-based covert features and sophisticated traceability technologies. Following Philippe will be Mr. Ralph Market from Interpol, and Ralph has been with Germany's Bundeskriminal for more than 25 years and joined Interpol in 2006. Ralph's responsible as project manager for the implementation of iCheck, and I think that's a very interesting development that we will be particularly interested in as it rolls out. So very interesting discussion from Ralph coming up. Following Ralph, we have Mr. John Keogh from GS1. From the Global Office, and Mr. Keogh advises industry and governments and intergovernmental agencies on the role and application of global supply chain standards in trade facilitation, cross-border data transparency and supply chain visibility. Following on from John, we have a customs spokesperson, and I'm delighted that we have the Director General of the Mauritius Revenue Authority with us, Mr. Suda Maulal, who was appointed Director General in May 2005 and is a member of the Mauritius Revenue Authority Board. He has led a complete organisational transformation of 4 revenue departments into an integrated revenue administration, and he has continually and successfully strived to implement the tax reform programs and instilled a high-performance culture at the Mauritius Revenue Authority, and I have had pleasure working with his administration personally and hold them in the highest of regard. Following, we will have Mr. Ian Lancaster, he's the Director of Reconnaissance International. Ian is co-founder and director of Reconnaissance. He specialises in providing business and market intelligence about anti-counterfeiting, authentication and holography. He has 10 years working as an arts administrator in the past, which has given him a huge background in understanding the issues around IP protection, and then founded Third Dimension Limited to produce film holograms. And lastly, we have Mr. David Cooper, who's the Director of Global Brand Intelligence and Global Anti-Counterfeiting Programs at Hewlett-Packard. David leads Hewlett-Packard's Global Intelligence and Global Anti-Counterfeiting Programs, providing a global and regional intelligence apparatus infrastructure to sales, services, warranty fraud and supply chain and anti-counterfeiting. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to turn to our first speaker, Mr. Philip Amon. Thank you, Philip. If you wish. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alan. I will try to talk to you about technology as Alan introduced it in a, as much as possible, condensed way. Secretary General, Director General, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you today about the importance of technology and its specific application to enabling trust in global trade. My company has spent the last 80 years developing security inks for banknotes and high-tech security solutions for government. Over the last decade, we have focused on developing the best technologies for authentication, tracking and tracing. Both are important means of making trade secure. The specific technologies used for authentication and for tracking and tracing have similarities but also important differences. Authentication is a key component of any system monitoring the movement of physical objects. But we also need reliable authentication for documents and electronic records. The revised Kyoto Convention, developed by the WCO, allows documents and other information to be submitted to the authorities in electronic format, but it does not make reference to authentication. Fortunately, the WCO has developed a recommendation on digitalization of supporting documents. And the WCO has also actively contributed to the United Nations CFACT project, reviewing the UN recommendation on authentication other than physical signature, ensuring it reflects latest development. And as far as monitoring, tracking and tracing is concerned, the WCO has set guidelines for the management of the integrated supply chain, which have proved extremely useful during the development of the SAFE framework of standards. At the June 2005 annual session of the WCO Organization Council in Brussels, Director General of Customs, representing the member of the WCO, adopted the SAFE framework of standard to secure and facilitate global trade. This unique international instrument ushered in a safer world trade regime and also heralded the beginning of a new approach to the end-to-end management of goods moving across border, while recognizing the significance of a closer partnership between customs and business. The SAFE framework creates, amongst other things, the conditions for securing international trade, but also facilitates and promotes international trade. This encourages and makes it easier for buyers and sellers to move goods across border. The SAFE framework takes account of and is based on modern international production and distribution models. Authorized economic operator reap benefits such as faster processing of goods by customs, for example, through reduced examination rates. This in turn translates into savings in time and cost. One of the main tenets of the SAFE framework is to create one set of international standards, and this establishes uniformity and predictability. It also reduces multiple and complex reporting requirements. These processes ensure that AEOs see a benefit to their investment in good security systems and practices, including reduced risk targeting assessment and inspection and expedited processing of their goods. Through the IT subcommittee, the World Customs Organization highlighted the visibility of the supply chain, and this issue remains important even if there is not yet a specific legal instrument. The framework remains standard. It remained the standard by the UN CITRAL. Can we combine the thought of trust and technology? Can technology create trust? And supposing it can, is this helpful to customs departments as well as to all control authorities around the world? I think it is. International organizations, and specifically the WCO, have evolved in line with technological advances so as to better fulfill their mission. Continuing to make the most of the latest technologies is crucial if they are to be successful in securing the international system, connecting the dots, separating the illicit trade from the illicit trade, enhancing the collection of import duties and taxes, and preventing counterfeit product from entering into member states, which has the double impact of protecting public health together with the brand protection. The mission of customs services is threefold: border control and combating counterfeiting and piracy, facilitating global trade, collecting excise and custom duties. But the three missions are not aligned. On the contrary, they may even be opposed. Controls at borders slow down trade. The key to resolving this contradiction is trust. A more solid trust relationship would enable faster and smoother global trade, and technology today can help create trust. So technology is key to achieving your triple mission. Much has already been done, and I would like to pay tribute to the tremendous work undertaken to enable the deployment of ad hoc technologies. I would like to congratulate those who have been visionary and have worked hard to put a framework in place for economic operators to trade globally in a seamless and efficient way. But there are great opportunities we must now exploit. First of all, standardization of trade processes and practices. Our host organization today, long before it took the name WCO in 1994, was active in this area as early as 1947, when 13 European governments represented in the Committee for European Economic Cooperation agreed to set up a study group. This group examined the possibility of establishing one or more inter-European custom union based on the principle of the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, known as GATT. Since then, we have seen constant progress towards harmonizing and streamlining global trade. Most recently, the adoption of the framework of standards to secure and facilitate global trade in 2005 and the entry into force of the 2012 harmonized system for the 179 customs administration member of the WCO that covers 98% of international trade today. On the side of industry also, the various stakeholders have made huge progress in defining best practice and harmonizing the exchange of data and information in order to streamline it and reduce costs. GS1 has played a crucial role. The industrial standard that they established and are now used by thousands of companies in more than 100 countries in the world have made possible the exchange of information in a structured way. Another important actor is the ISO, founded in 1947. It has published more than 19,000 international standards covering almost all aspects of technology and business, from food safety to computers to agriculture and healthcare. 20 years ago, plugging two companies together was a challenge. EDI projects were very expensive and complex. Today, it is almost plug and play. Technology is everywhere, but is it everywhere under control? Has technology eliminated fraud and illicit trafficking? Sadly not. Counterfeiting and piracy have never been so pervasive. Why is this? There are defined standards, agreed communication protocols, there are processes in place. Does this mean you have a secured business? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Installing a pipeline to simplify and speed up the transportation of water from a well to a village is a great solution. But if the water gets polluted, you get fast delivery of polluted water to the village. In this example, as in so many situations in real life, innovation and problem resolution processes often do not consider security. Only the immediate objective counts. It's only when things go wrong that there is an investment to eliminate risk and recreate trust. We can apply the same principle to the globalization of trade. So far, the priority has been focusing on enabling global trade, but we need to focus on the risk and invest in technology to ensure we don't enable trade, but we make it secure as well. What needs to do What needs to be done in order to achieve that? There is 3 legs. The first legs of any transaction is the most classic, is the document management. A set of documents has to be produced and submitted. Today this is mostly done electronically. Alone, this offers opportunity to criminal organizations to commit fraud more easily than before. This is why 2 other levels of technology are necessary. The material-based protection of the goods. Whatever the sophistication of the process when dealing with merchandise, you must be able to authenticate the goods. Marking the product itself at the moment it gets produced with a solid material-based protection like a secured non-removable stamp, for instance, is a good way to protect it. The third leg consists of a digital control or track and trace. With today's technologies, any product can be tracked from the start of its life as raw material through transformation, distribution, and to consumption. In the case of problem, this digital protection enables tracing back through the whole supply chain in order to identify who is responsible for what. Tracking and tracing replaces neither physical protection of the product nor good documents management, but it adds a new security layer. The strength of the protection comes from the combination of the 3 pillars: document management, material-based protection, and digital track and trace. But even if this may not be enough, criminal organizations are extremely proactive and creative. The protection you choose should be the most difficult to copy and imitate. It should not be available off the shelf. If it's available to the public marketplace, organized criminal will find a way of copying it and thus losing its protective value. Think, for instance, about holograms, which are so popular today. You can buy them online anytime with a personalized logo and any design you wish. They may look nice and fit your brand, but they can't really be considered as robust material anymore. The true material-based protection is not easy to achieve and is the result of high level of continuous innovation, research and development. Only few companies in the world are capable of delivering high-level protection, marking with constantly new features from their laboratories and patented protected. This means the application is also a key success factor. Any security feature, whatever its strengths, must be accompanied with the right application technology that fits the packaging substrate, the packaging process, and speed of execution, and the product characteristic as well. Any new solution must be rolled out quickly and professionally. The impact on production in terms of throughput and cost must be minimal to none. You must trust your technology partner. This is the key word. Another important principle is the separation of roles between controllee and controller. This was imposed on the finance world after recent scandals. The separation of role is a key principle when working on the trust relationship in manufacturing and trade. Would you entrust the care of your fridge to someone who is hungry? This basic principle is increasingly implemented in the international public law building process and prohibits controllees to become controllers of the supply chain in lieu and place of government. The better interoperability between systems is essential. Within the EU Schengen area, there are no longer checkpoints on border between member states, but there are enforcement staff that talk to each other and exchange information about transportation of goods, payment of tax, electronic document. The networking process has to develop. International organizations like WCO need to do even more to stimulate and support exchange between enforcement bodies around the world. Once you have a good network on information exchange, business intelligence tools become also extremely. The enforcement agent will be able to concentrate their efforts only on risk area instead of random search. Finally, enabling trust, providing the means for secure global trade, is a goal that the WCO and everybody in this room has understood and is ready to address. It is also the mission of my company, which provides high security inks and other features to protect banknotes across the globe. SIGPA is a unique solution provider to government of security solutions, already protecting more than 70 billion products annually of excise taxes around the world. We stand ready to work together with you to make sure that you are successful in achieving your goal of making global trade a safer place. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Moving to our next speaker, I think there were two key issues that came out of this first presentation. Security is a layered approach, and that technology build trust? And I think that is a nice segue into Ralph's presentation from Interpol. Thank you, Ralph. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor to speak on our new service tool, iCheckIt, or Interpol Checkit. I think the last days we have heard a lot about the threat from counterfeiting and piracy. We have heard a lot about success stories about fighting counterfeiting and piracy. And we have also learned about close cooperation that needs to be done between law enforcement, international organizations, and the private sector to achieve the goal, to win that war for the population, for the individual in each country of the world. Interpol in the recent, let's say, 10 years has done an tremendous change in its approach of, I would say, a coming out to develop databases by combining and gathering information from international institutions, from countries and governments, to bring it to the front line to fight organized crime and terrorism, where we also see as Interpol a clear link to illicit trade, counterfeiting, and piracy. And in this, let's say, tradition, we have in the recent year started to build up the new tool, and I'm very proud to present you in the next few minutes, Interpol Checkit, iCheckIt. As you see on the screen, it's an umbrella that is, from my point of view, developed under two pillars. Pillar number one is the collecting of information on product security, authentication solutions, and enhanced security features on products, and providing a gateway to the iCheckIt platform to allow then on the outgoing information to reach out to the individual, so that the individual will have an enhanced chance to check whether a product is following the description of genuinity, or even if the system will say, well, this product that you have in front of you is not matching the current information that is given actually online by the product owner via the gateway. And I think this we heard also the last days. Important is the individual. We can do a lot, but we cannot be in every corner. So whatever we can give as a helping tool towards the individual, to give security to the individual before buying whatever product that can bring him into danger, or in a second line, harming him financially, is absolutely crucial. Secondly, we thought, well, we should not stop just with genuine products, because if we talk about illicit trade, we have also to talk about organized crime groups selling stolen products, what we also define under the illicit trade. And, of course, we have to say clearly, we also have to see which products are bought via stolen or lost documentations, or in the last step, that is another thing, which products are offered in the luxury brand market that are also stolen and offered again illegally to the public, to the individual. If we talk about the first pillar, the genuine products, we talk about, let's say, 3 steps. First, of course, we want to collect the data online from the product owners, the information about the authentication solution that they have for their specific product with the security features that they allow via us to be enabled and shown towards the public to enhance the security to the individual. We will do that, and we talked about, well, where we have a lot of problems, and I heard on the first day from a colleague from Kenya about the medicine, and my colleague Aline Planson also talked about medicine fraud and how this is definitely harming people because they believe in a real product and they get a false product, they don't cure their sickness, and they die maybe on their sickness. And if you don't have an internet connection and if you cannot reach out to them on, we say, another public possibility, but for sure what we have also in the second and the third world is mobile phones and the possibility to check via these mobile phones via a gratis app against a product. And it has to be real time. That means we are not storing data and this data is old and the person cannot rely anymore on the data. A second is, of course, we are allowing all entities to give access to their products and allow a gateway to their products and description of their products and to their security features. Authentication solutions, we talk about other security features depending on the product and what was chosen from the company itself. And the last thing, what is in my opinion also very important, is every check is reported. That means we are enabling the private industry and law enforcement to get half-yearly information reports that say this product has been screened in that region of the world several times. And we had so many hits on that product, meaning this product has not matched the criteria that your company has given to us linked to the security features. And of course, we also tell that our law enforcement agencies in our 190 member countries, so that on both ends, on the private entity and on the law enforcement side, we are able to work together to see the latest trends and to fight against these trends from the different aspects that we have. Shortly, the first pillar of the iCheckIt platform, gathering of actual information, allowing the public to verify a product against a simple app via their mobile phone or a web-based connection, and to give a clear and focused reporting to the private industry and to our law enforcement and, of course, customs to do the right steps and to react quickly on latest trends and to fight this form of crime. The second pillar, thinking visionary. Police has a lot of databases. We are in the front line, we are in the borders with our different databases. But what is what we call the homeland security? What is, for example, a stolen car? I'm going, and we talked about internet solutions in the last days very strongly, and how illicit goods are sold via the internet. Well, there is no border in that sense. I'm buying a product, and let's talk about the first solution that we will offer. We call it Vinco. When we talk about a car, you're buying a 30 or 40,000 euro car from a reseller website. You cannot get ownership on that car, and the next day the police might pass by your door and might say, "Sorry, sir," and the car is gone. How do you trace the person who sold you the car? So you have a huge damage on that. So by connecting to our stolen motor vehicle database, we are able to react quickly with the web-based reseller, the company, or even the car manufacturer to hinder and make trouble to the organized crime to make their business. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about organized crime, we just talk about business. And we need to make their life miserable. And that means to, in a secure and legally binding way, open up our systems also to the targeted private entities. The second one, we talk about hotels and other services, airlines. We have our stolen lost travel document database with more than 30 million passports and identity documents reported from more than 154 countries of the world. We have a lot of information that people are checking in a hotel with a stolen passport. We have a risk here in high-risk countries that these people might make an attack against the hotel. We have the problem that people open bank accounts. They take a credit and they run away with the money. We have people who are entering planes with stolen documentations. By stopping them for entering even and making their business, we are already on the right way. And the last one, what we are currently developing is, and this comes also again to the genuine product, the people might also want to know is this a genuine watch? And maybe people also want to know, is this a stolen watch? And that's why we are also currently developing a new database calling slide for luxury items that are able to be identified. That is very important. I don't want to go into the hit alarm, but I just want to make clear with that slide, whatever is on the pillar 2 for link to our databases on stolen products screened against our systems and producing what we call a hit will automatically generate an alarm in the responsible national Interpol bureau that we have in our 190 member countries and start with the private entity immediately on this national discretion and national legislation the investigation towards this hit. Combined efforts for a goal that we all should have together. To close, it's an ambitious tool, yes. But in my opinion, this is a living tool that in the next years, and we are already working on that for several months, and we learn already so much. And yesterday evening, I had a private meeting with one private company, and it was so delighting to see how open you can also speak with the private sector when you understand clearly both sides of the medal to achieve one common goal. We want this year to finalize our stress testing with the system by mid this year. We want to have our General Assembly approving the whole concept in October this year, and we want to go online with the system by the end of the year. And we hope that all law enforcement, international organizations and the private sector will use that tool not only to fight illicit trade, but also to communicate with each other for the common goal to fight organized crime and terrorism on a global level. Thank you very much.
All right, it's my pleasure now to call on our next speaker, John from GS1, who will carry on along a similar theme, I think. So, John, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. On April the 3rd, 1973, 40 years ago, US industry made a very important decision. It was a decision that would have significant societal benefits. It would revolutionize how business operates. It was a revolution in innovation, automation, and it laid the foundation for enhancing consumer trust, safety, while facilitating improved supply chain efficiencies. The cost savings in the 40 years since that decision is measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars. That decision was to standardize on one linear barcode for product identification. What started as a way to speed up the grocery checkout process has become the global language of business, a common way for trading partners around the world to identify, capture, and share information about products, assets, services, and more. That decision marked the foundation of today's GS1 organization, and we are also delighted to point out that the GS1 barcode is not only well trusted, it's scanned 6 billion times every day. As an independent and neutral not-for-profit organization, GS1's primary task is to facilitate capacity building in the development and voluntary adoption of consensus-driven global standards to facilitate trade, ensuring that products, assets, services, and information about them move securely and seamlessly throughout the supply chain. I should also note that GS1 has a physical presence in 111 countries and more than 2,000 staff ready to assist. In Turkey, as an example, GS1 is hosted by TOBB. And for Mr. Li in China, who presented earlier, GS1 in China is part of the Chinese government and reports into AQSIQ. So the information I will share will be hopefully a revelation of new access to information that your department can use. On April the 3rd, we also shared the 40th birthday with the first cell phone call and the birth of the mobile phone industry as we know it today. And so while we went on divergent paths for 35 years, we have come together over the last 5+ years, and now our mutual success in driving global adoption has converged our two global trusted platforms as a mechanism to capture and share product information with multiple stakeholders. A perfect example of this is the alignment with WCO and the enhancement of the IPM mobile application to use the same linear barcode to gain access to a new world of global standard, a world rich with structured and trusted product data, including contact details for more than 2 million companies and 11 million products from across 23 different sectors. GS1 is delighted with the continued collaboration with WCO and looking forward to adding additional features and capabilities over time. Moving on, if you look at a broader scale at how industry standards facilitate technology adoption, and they also facilitate a lot of stakeholders' needs, as you'll see on the chart. The typical stakeholders' needs we address: ensuring accurate traceability from the source right out to retail, effective recall. By being able to identify a product, you can effectively recall the product. If I go over to the right-hand side on the green box, facilitate trade or also block unsafe or counterfeit goods. World Customs has been using a serialized shipping container code that's typically on a label on a pallet for about 7 years. So it's not just about the physical identification of the product itself, but also of the package, also of the pallet and the container. All of this, wrapped up in global standards, enables everybody to communicate seamlessly across the supply chain. And this is done by identification of the individual company. So for most of you would not realize that the actual number in a barcode that's used at point of sale has logic built in. The first 3 digits are the country code where it was issued. The next 5 digits is the company. Those 8 digits together become the license plate that we assign to a company. So we have 2 million companies with all of their details registered, and then the companies assign the trailing digits to their products. As I mentioned, we have over 11 million products registered, with extensive details on those products to help meet regulatory requirements and market access requirements in many countries around the world. So this globally unique identification and the data interoperability standards becomes a way to help facilitate trade around the world. This is part of the key messages that I wanted to share today. We have systems that are tried, they're true, they're tested, and well deployed around the world. We congratulate WCO on the adoption of this. I know that many of you will be thinking that, well, the barcode can be counterfeited as well. I would welcome you to get a copy of this brochure which WCO has developed. It'll give you an example of how the multi-tiered system is put in place. So even if the barcode is counterfeited, it'll give you access into multi-layers to be able to authenticate the product. It will also protect the investment that all the technology companies have, and part of the global standards will allow you to route to the authoritative source for authentication. So all of the brilliant companies that are out here showcasing their technologies can still participate in that whole environment. What WCO has done is created a gateway into that, a front door, a key to open up the door to get access to a significant amount of rich information. Again, the brochure is there and it's available, and I would encourage you to talk to the IPM team to get a demo and see what it means for you and for your country. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I think the key points about industry standards are well made, and it's now my pleasure to call on Director General Lau to come forward and say a few words from the Customs perspective. Director General, the floor is yours.
His Excellency Secretary General, WCO, Mr. Moderator, distinguished members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure and privilege for me to share Mauritius' experience in this global Congress on combating counterfeiting and piracy. I will attempt to give a glimpse of the IPR activities of the Mauritius Revenue Authority, the use of IT, including IPM, and the benefits of IPM generated to the MRA customs. As tax and customs administrators, our job is to translate theory into practice, and this presentation will dwell on the results achieved by implementing the WCO tools. I'm sure most of you know about Mauritius, but just in case, for those who may not be familiar, I would say it's a tiny island in the Indian Ocean between Asia and Africa, with a population of 1.2 million, and is a member of WTO, WCO, SADC, COMESA, and IOC. It's signatory to several international conventions and bilateral agreements related to IPR, such as the Paris and Bern Conventions and the TRIPS Agreement. The custom legislation in Mauritius was amended in 2004 to incorporate the provisions of the TRIPS Agreement relating to border protection. An IPR unit was set up, which started to work in those with the Industrial Property Office. The unit is responsible for enforcement and liaises with the frontline officers and the right holders. Upon the discovery of suspected infringing goods, strict time frames are followed within 10 working days from the date of the notification of the right holder needs to inform customs if they intend to initiate legal proceedings against the declarant of goods. To date, 106 right holders have applied for border protection of 242 products. The number of suspension of clearance of goods was about 250 in 2011 and also the same number in 2012. 133 cases of legal proceedings have been initiated by right holders, and judgment has so far been received in 76 cases, all in favor of the right holders and the MRA. I would just submit that Mauritius, being a small, kindly look these figures in the context of its size. In 2010, with the assistance of the WCO, a national IPR seminar was organized for customs, other enforcement agencies, and right holders. This event was followed by a two-day workshop which was organized in collaboration with the WCO on the occasion of the launching of IPM in Mauritius in November 2012. We are also contemplating organizing a two-week operational workshop on IPR for our frontline officers by the end of this year. In addition, MRA Customs has participated in various projects coordinated by the WCO and RILOs, where the CENCOM, which is a secure information exchange platform, was used for the exchange of information relating to each project among participating members. Some of the most notable IP initiatives and enforcement projects include the following: Pangea 5, the illegal advertising and sale and supply of unlicensed and counterfeit medicines from unregulated websites; Customs Alert Network, the battle against substandard tainted and counterfeit products, the importation of hazardous products, including electrical items like lights, batteries, etc. Other communication tools is one of the most important is the NSEN. I am pleased to announce that Mauritius was among the first country to implement the NSEN in August 2010. And this was, in fact, as an application, this was for the collection and storage of enforcement data at a national level with the information communication interface icon. As you are aware, WCO has designed and developed a very efficient system and an innovative tool called IPM, which you can see on the screen. And this is the only global counterfeiting tool and is currently being used by 1/3 of WCO members. We have heard of iCheckIt, that appears to be a development. It's one of the core constituents of the combating of counterfeiting and piracy division of the WCO, and it is firmly embedded in a dual approach strategy embodying both theoretical and practical training techniques via its user-friendly platform and learning facility. A critical success factor of IPM is that it's a web-based tool, meaning that it can be accessed by anyone who has the necessary login and password, making it a very secure tool at the same time. The IPM was officially launched in Mauritius in November. Since then, 60 frontline officers working in the port have been fully trained and have access to this tool. It's to be noted that IPM was used by frontline officers during 2 recent operations organized by the WCO, namely Operation Eastern Gate in December 2012 and Operation Baila held at the beginning of this month. MRA views capacity building and training as a key component to the success of the system in order to enhance efficiency as regards to the combat against counterfeiting. Training is being provided to frontline officers working in bonded warehouses, the export, the airport, transit sheds, and the airport arrivals. The benefits of IPM derived by the MRA include increase in the application for border protection, enhanced communication with right holders, and better focused training for both officers and right holders. And in this connection, I would state that right holders, namely AstraZeneca, HP, and Nivea, deliver training workshops to our frontline officers to assist them in identifying products. It's to be noted that following the training provided, our frontline officers have during Operation Baila intercepted a consignment of 80,000 tablets which are suspected to infringe the AstraZeneca trademark. Up-to-date information available in real time. The advantage of this is that recently we detected 3 cases equating to 9,925 units of fake HP cartons. The frontline officer can refer to the information available in the IPM, and on the basis of reasonable suspicion, he can suspend the clearance of the goods. However, I should like to point out that IPM is in itself a tool and not a legal instrument. It's the responsibility of the right holder to provide evidence in court relating to the counterfeit of pirated products. Based on the feedback we have received, WCO's e-learning module on IPR are being appreciated, and our officers can assess this e-learning module in the IPM to train on product identification and can follow the process of becoming a certified IPM user. The detrimental effect of counterfeit goods traffic on the global economy is increasing every year, and the efforts deployed by the WCO Customs Services and other agencies worldwide to counter such traffic cannot be underestimated. Making maximum use of technology and tools such as IPM, will enable customs and IP right holder to fight counterfeiting, which is causing serious economic and social damage to all nations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Director General. I think we can agree that Mauritius has embarked on a very ambitious policy of reform in this area. I think it's now my pleasure to introduce Ian Lancaster, and I think he'll bring a different perspective to the issue. And it will be very interesting to hear Ian's views as the writer and publisher of several magazines in relation to business and market intelligence about anti-counterfeiting. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, and thank you to the organisers for the pleasure and honour of addressing you. I, for the last few years, have been a member of an international standards organisation, ISO committee, which has developed a new standard which I'm going to introduce to you. I'd just like to ask, if I may, would you just show me your hand in the audience if you are representing a public sector organisation here, government agency or a multi-government agency? Thank you. And if you're representing a brand owner? Oh, good, good, a nice balance. Brand owners, many of you will know that there's over 300 authentication solutions available to you. I know that because they're listed in this directory. And that was one reason that the ISO set out to provide clarity and guidance in this field and came up with this standard. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that this is a performance criteria standard. It asks, what do you, as a user, need an authentication solution to do? It doesn't ask or specify what the authentication solution does. The standard very much is aimed at users of authentication solutions. This is it. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not going to read you every page, every word, but I'm going to skim through the key points of it. And as I say, key point here is that it is intended for organizations that require the ability to validate the authenticity of material goods. It is intended to guide such organizations in the determination of the categories of authentication elements they need to combat those risks and the criteria for selection of the authentication solutions. It is a guidance standard to help users of authentication solutions. It guides users through the steps necessary to select the appropriate solution. The process starts with a risk assessment. Users need to assess the vulnerabilities of their products, the vulnerabilities of their supply chain, and they need to assess the needs that they then have for authentication. For example, is the product going to be sold once, or is it possibly going to be resold later on? And if it is to be resold, does it need authentication at that point? What are the environmental conditions in which the authentication solution has to perform, has to survive and perform? So it gets you to ask this kind of question of yourself and your products and your supply chain. Like all ISO standards, it includes definitions. There are 3 pages of definitions in this standard, starting from attack, which it defines as a successful or unsuccessful attempt to circumvent an authentication solution. And it finishes with track and trace, which it defines as a means of identifying every individual material, good or lot, etc., etc. It includes definitions of authentication and authenticate. It includes definitions of overt and covert authentication, for example. It also offers categories of authentication solutions. It categorizes the solutions available to you. And it addresses the question of whether they are suitable for a general audience, that is, the public, the consumer, or a restricted audience, which might be customs officers or a brand owner's own staff. And so, it guides you, the user, through the criteria: do you need a solution for a general audience or a restricted audience, or, of course, indeed, both? In doing this, in categorizing authentication solutions, in guiding users through their selection of the appropriate solutions for their needs, the standard includes this statement, which I will explore somewhat. The statement is that track and trace technology, when used alone, is not considered an authentication solution. Our first speaker in this panel mentioned that track and trace and authentication need to be combined. And the main thrust of this standard, if anything, is combination of solutions. There are providers of track and trace solutions who assert that their solution delivers authentication. The ISO committee spent hours, if not days, discussing this statement before deciding to include it in the standard, and concluded very unanimously that track and trace does not deliver authentication when used alone. I want to ask you to imagine yourself in a street market in, say, Vientiane or Bogota, or even Canal Street, New York, or Leicester, England. And the reason for you being there, imagining yourself there, is I want to ask you, how do you identify that a product that you might be about to buy, whether a medicine or a CD or whatever, is that genuine, pirated, or not? Chances are that that product has not come through the legitimate supply chain. And it's in the legitimate supply chain that track and trace works so well. Track and trace does help to control the legitimate supply chain, and in doing so does help to reduce the incidence of counterfeit, pirated goods in distribution. But the codes used for track and trace can be replicated, websites, data stores can be cloned, and if you are a consumer about to buy a product, how do you know, how does your smartphone know with which you are scanning the code, that the response that comes back and says, yes, this is a good item, this is a genuine item, how does your smartphone know that it has gone to the correct, legitimate, authorized website to get that information back? So this is a key statement within the standard. I would commend this view and indeed the whole standard to every user of authentication in this audience, every brand owner. And if you would like to know more, I do have a copy you can look at. I can't let you have it. It is, of course, copyright of the ICO. You can purchase it from the ISO website, www.iso.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. I'd commend you all to look at the ISO standard, and I also commend the work of the panel that Ian's part of. They give their time, an immeasurable amount of time, to set these standards that guide us so much around these commercially available applications and how we bring sense to standardising the approach. Leads me nicely into the last speaker, David from Hewlett-Packard, who I'll welcome you to the floor to say a few words. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about technology, no surprise there. But I'm also going to talk to you about people, because technology without people generally doesn't work. And in today's age, people without technology, it's difficult to make that work too. About 50 years ago, US government procurement policy was to purchase product from the lowest bidder. Last week I had the honour to have dinner with the commander of Apollo 17. He was the last man to step foot on the moon. And bearing in mind the way the supply chain works, I asked myself this question. In the 1970s, thousands of pieces went together to make an Apollo rocket. Each one of those pieces of the Apollo rocket was made by the lowest bidder. In 1970, I'd probably been quite happy to strap that rocket to my back and go into space. Ask yourself this question. Would you want to be sitting today on a launch pad with a rocket made up of thousands of pieces that have been manufactured by the lowest bidder? Supply chain has changed, and it's not got safer. Now, at Hewlett-Packard, we use technology to protect our products, and I'm not going to talk to you about that. We embrace technology in the fight against counterfeiting and piracy. Mr. Noble mentioned on the first day of the Congress, and Ralph spoke earlier about iCheck, about a system and a database that will allow consumers to verify product. That's a great idea. There are other great ideas that are out there at the moment. WCO and the initiative that has been mentioned about IPM. And HP embraces that technology. It's a great way of enabling customs officers throughout the world to verify in real time whether they're looking at genuine or counterfeit product. Before we get to the point where we can have a database that every consumer in the world can get access to, I'd like to see a database that every law enforcement official can get access to. And I think IPM is that. And I understand that WCO are in the process of offering access to IPM to the police and other law enforcement agencies, and I applaud that. We often get asked as brands to participate in capacity building exercises. And part of that is technology too. Sometimes it can be frustrating to see one organisation go into a particular region for capacity building to be followed a matter of months later by another organisation. And then a couple of months after that, the EU comes along and does their capacity building as well. I'm a profit and loss manager within my company, and where you have duplication, you lose money. Going back to the same place with 3 organisations is not the best way to spend anybody's budget. And I think it's important that organisations should work together to ensure that they leverage technology and they leverage the opportunities that they have to educate law enforcement, customs, and other government employees. I'm going to finish up with just one little thought, and this is a request from myself as a rights holder, a request from other rights holders as well who I've spoken to. I firmly believe, having attended the conference this week, that we are facing a unique situation that we should embrace, and that unique situation is an opportunity for the World Customs Organization and for Interpol to work closer together in leveraging the technology that they have. IPM is one example. The Investigators College, which has been developed by Interpol with Underwriters Laboratories, is another example of good technology. And by doing that, everybody will get together because everybody's fighting the same fight. Trust me, there's enough work out there for every customs officer in the world to address counterfeiting. And whilst they're addressing counterfeiting and piracy, at the same time, there's enough work out there for all of law enforcement to be doing it simultaneously. So my request would be that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and you'll be pleased to know that I'm the last person who's going to take up your time on this panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. Some sobering words there right at the end of the panel. In the interest of time, I'm going to try and sum up very quickly. We may take one or two questions off the floor before we move to the closing at 1:45, all going well. I thought in the very first address that we heard from Philippe, can technology build trust? And clearly, what we heard throughout the sessions is yes, it can, but not necessarily in isolation, and that a layered approach is incredibly important. In the Interpol presentation, we saw a very innovative technology being developed. The linking of databases through using technology to provide information to consumers and to law enforcement officials is the goal, and that can only be exploited where we can put information in the hands of law enforcement officials to make good decisions, because good decisions facilitate legitimate trade and they stop bad trade. GS1 talked about industry standards, and I think what was there and incredibly interesting is how these industry standards, when they're developed, give guidance to how we can standardise the processing of legitimate supply chains, and also start to look at the goods that are in those supply chains that may not be so. Mauritius went on to talk about the practical realities on the ground, what's happening in Mauritius and the wonderful reforms that are underway there in terms of building IP protection. And then we talked about the ISO standard 12931, which really gives guidance to how we should deal with some of the plethora of emerging technologies as they come towards us, and how we make business decisions both in the private and public sectors, and how we're going to use those technologies and the standardisation of the rules and procedures around them to assist us both innovate but also protect our innovation in a way that is really meaningful. And then finally, some sobering words from David, as always, that a database for every law enforcement officer in the world would be a wonderful thing. And I can only applaud that, and the well-made points about collaboration and playing to the strengths of the relative parties across both the public and private sector, because there are a lot of challenges out there for us, and it's only through collaboration together and coordination of our activities and capacity building efforts and operations that we will be able to fight the good fight without wasting precious resources. So I'd just like to turn the floor open for one or two quick questions, if anybody has them, to any of the panellists before we move to the closing session. Sir, Adam, in the middle here. Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Alessandra Vercelloni. I work for OPSEC Security. I found this panel extremely enlightening and useful. OPSEC is a provider of security solution to governments and brands worldwide. And while I appreciated Mr. Amon's presentation, I strongly disagree with one of his statements, and in particular with the fact that as holograms are available on the internet, therefore can be considered a robust authentication media to provide physical security. Now, I think that availability on the internet should not delegitimate the security of any product, neither branded or technology. I wish also to remind that a significant number of banknotes, passports, and branded goods use sophisticated holographic products manufactured by reputable manufacturers certified by independent bodies such as the CWA. Therefore, we are providers of robust and trustable technical solutions to prevent counterfeiting. This is everything I wanted to add to a brilliant presentation.
Perhaps before I ask Philippe to answer that question, maybe if there is just one more question, if anybody has another question. Do we have another question on the floor? Over here, please. We can speak.
Thank you for a really illuminating discussion. This is Tanmay from Shell. My question is to Mr. Markret. I'd like to ask what options would brand owners have to allow their brand's authentication process to be loaded onto your iCheckIt platform? And what kind of measures would be in place to make sure that no counterfeiter can actually get on?
All right. Philippe, perhaps we could go back to you first.
Thank you for your remark, Madame. It's just perhaps to precise that what I wanted to mean in my opening speech before was that whatever security feature we're talking about cannot be used in isolation. And it was just a very generic example, and I'm sorry if this has been taken out of the precision that I just made.
Yeah. Ralph, perhaps you could take your question now too. Thanks.
The process of bringing the private sector on our platform is, and I just had a limited time frame. Alan was telling me don't overgo. First of all, the information that will be given from the private sector and the databases stay with the private sector. So we are signing with each of the companies that we are engaging with, first of all, an agreement, a strong agreement. So that means there is a due diligence towards the product and the company itself already embedded before we go online and allow the check against the database and the product itself. So that there is a process of engaging with the company, and it's not just opening and allowing each and everybody automatically via a password to put their product on the database, and that's it. So we are very carefully when we are choosing the products and seeing also that the solutions and what is offered to be checked against has a meaning, and that the end consumer can do something with the information that is provided. But it's in the discretion, of course, of each company, by also understanding that some of the security features are very sensitive and might not be willing to be made public, as we want to say that. But also to make sure with all the security features that are out there, it's a daily fight against organized crime, and to say this is the security feature and this is so perfect that it cannot be falsified and this will be staying forever, I think that would be a lie. So there is a constant fight, and an update on security features is a normal standard. What we want to do is just to come on the eye height with the criminals and make their life more and more complicated within their business. We can, after for sure, also talk a little bit more in depth about the process of the companies.
All right. Thank you. It's now to change my hat again, and it's my pleasure to thank the panel. If you could join with me.